Lobby back in, good reward for him, and obviously one of the biggest tasks taking on Max Gorman.
Yeah, it is. I mean, it's obviously timing's good for us because we know how good Max has been all season, and Jacko's done a great job for us. But we think, obviously having some support there against probably the All-Australian ruckman is probably a good decision.
How are you going to pair the two of them? Are you still going to use Trinko as a ruck who goes somewhere else, or?
Yeah, we'll have to do that with both of them. Rooch, to be honest, we'll have to. Both boys like to play a little bit of a different position as well, and where that is, we probably won't declare for you today, but we'll work towards getting them into positions that they'll probably share the ruck duties between them, and then they'll have to fill up some of their time in other areas of the ground.
So how important is that for Lobby, knowing that Ryder's coming back next year to show that he can work that sort of system with another ruck?
Oh, I think it's important for both boys to be able to play. In the ideal world, we'd like to have two informed ruckmen in our team all the time, and so if you can do that and also influence in other areas of the ground, that certainly helps that you get that position, I'd imagine.
Is Lobby, how much has he worked as a forward for you recently? Do you know what he could be like there as a forward?
So how long?
Yeah, you've done much work with him as a forward?
No, not really. No, he's predominantly played ruck with us, and he certainly gets time in the forward line because that's what he's been able to do off and on over the journey. But he hasn't had a lot of time there, so there's no denying that.
Is having two ruckmen make it easier to take one key forward in and often turn?
Yeah, well, that's what we have to do. To get your balance of what you want and can maintain run that you need for the game and the quality of the opposition we play against. You've got to make some decisions, and we think the decision to play Lobby against Gawn is one that we had to take.
With Charlie, obviously very difficult for him to make an impact last week, not being able to get the ball to him, but what do you talk to him about? Because obviously he would reflect on his game and not taking much part, but do you remind him that he can't really help that much, or what was your assessment of his game?
Yeah, no, I think we remind our whole forward line, because there was times last week, and there's been times, a number of times throughout the season, where our forward line disappeared on us as far as wanting, but their disappearance comes from their intent to defend. But we've just got to remind them that when we get sucked up the ground too far, we end up actually losing shape in front of the ball, which is not something we deliberately try to get happening, but it's something that when your intent is to defend as a team, you can get it a little bit wrong at times, particularly when you're suffering constant entry against you, and that's what we did last week.
You said you wouldn't play anyone new unless they were ready. What's made Jesse Palmer ready for AFL footy? Yeah,
he's been amongst it for the last 3 or 4 weeks for us. We think we've ummed and ahed a little bit with Jesse over the last 3 or 4 weeks, and we think last week's game was just another indication to us that we need to find out a little bit more about him at the next level, and he couldn't have worked any harder on his game. He's gone in and played inside mid, outside mid, half forward flanker, up and back, so he's got himself some flexibility in his role, so we look forward to, and he'll bring some excitement, there's no doubt. Every time you do bring a first gamer in, it's exciting for everyone around the club.
What about John Butcher? What was your message to him? He clearly would have been disappointed.
Yeah, John, anyone that loses their spot inside, not just John, but there was an obvious reason for why we brought in Matthew Lobby, and John may not always like that reason, but the facts are we needed an extra ruck.
Is that just a horses for courses sort of thing? Like, could you see you reverting back to the structure you had against Sydney when you go forward?
Yeah,
showdown, or?
You certainly can, but it just depends on your performance, what you do. I would have thought our best scenario would be we'd have 2 strong rucks in our team, which would help us, but then there's a challenge for other people who are trying to get in other positions, particularly talls. If they're trying to fight for another spot, you've got to be in really good form consistently, and you've got to play well every opportunity you get.
So is there enough time then for John to make his case for next year?
There's always enough time for everyone. I always say that, and I don't get caught in decision-making, list management stuff at this time of the year. I just don't want to go there. It's just not fair to anyone or everyone, and you'll make bad decisions at this time of the year. And people say, oh, it's 3 games out, 2 games out, 1 game out. Those decisions are always done at the end of the completion of a season, and I say that now because any time you say anything different, some people will call it a yes and some people will call it a no. I say it honestly. It's a decision that gets made at the end of the season.
Riley Bonner, is he pretty close?
Really close. Yeah, no, really close. He's playing some really consistent football, and like Jesse, I said, when we gift games, you've got to earn them, and you've got to play 4 or 5 good, solid games of football in a row. And I think right now, if you ask me right now, Riley Bonner is right there. Now he's got to do some more work on tomorrow afternoon at Glenelg, and hopefully he can do that really well. And who knows?
What do you expect if Riley happens to come in the next few weeks? I think that takes up to 37 or 38 players for the year. Could you not gone the way that you would have expected to?
No, there's some obvious things that have gone against us this year. We're not going over old ground because I don't like to talk about stuff like that too often, but what it's done is give us opportunity to see some stuff, and I'm really pleased about that.
Ken, if you get a response tomorrow, what does it then say about the graph? You've got a graph that keeps going up and down.
No, not too much. It's pretty. It's easy to see. It's easy to understand that our challenges have been at the moment still against the best teams. We haven't been able to compete with them at the level that we need to. Occasionally, not always, but occasionally, and that's our challenge. We don't go away from that. There's parts of our game that we continually work on. The solutions are keep working on those areas. There's no quick fix, but it's just keep working at those areas and learn. The question we start with at the end of every game: what did we learn from that? And if we ignore that question, we will get nowhere.
Have you learned? I mean, you look at the last 2 years, specifically, and say, right, next year we have...
It's a really good question, because that's what people that sit where you all sit today say, well, what have you learned? Well, I think we're learning all the time. And we've got to be able to complete that learning, and that means executing it under the real pressure most of the time. And at the moment, there's still lots to get done for us as a football club.
Have you seen enough then to be optimistic about next year?
Well, I'm optimistic about tomorrow, and that's all I want to focus on. I don't want to focus on too far ahead. I can understand why you start to ask those questions at this time of the year. It's reasonable, but for me, I've got a job, and that's to be optimistic about tomorrow night and tomorrow afternoon at the Magpies.
Good. Then what would it do for the group to knock off Melbourne?
Oh, and that's what we're here to do. That's our job. 22 weeks of the year, and hopefully more for some. You're here to win. That's what our job is to do, and that's what it should do for the group. It should be that you're fulfilling your obligation to complete the task, and that's what my job is, and that's what I go about doing.
But if you are developing, if you are improving, if you are showing that curve, tomorrow represents a game that surely is a big test against a side that's improving. We know they've...
Oh, mate, it's a great test tomorrow. They've beaten Hawthorn last week. They've got a significant amount of talent on their team, but they're not dissimilar to us. I think they're probably asking themselves some similar questions as you're asking me, I reckon, today. So that's a challenge for both myself and Ruzi, and obviously Goody. We've just got to continually work at being consistent, and until you get above that, you don't elevate yourself to the better teams in the competition.
Can you talk about every game ends with what have you learned from that? What happened then on Monday, where the players start asking some pretty serious questions of themselves as well in the review? Yeah,
no, we do all the time, and particularly, let's not hide from the fact that it was a really poor performance. We ask those questions all the time, and you want to drill down, and you want to find some answers, and you want to go about trying to correct them. That's what I like about our players. They want to go about trying to correct the mistakes that they make, and they're not perfect, and they're going to make mistakes.
Was it more searching than in previous?
No, I don't think so. I think there was some obvious stuff that we didn't stand up in against the Swans, and to their credit, a great side, have been a great side for a long period of time. They exposed us in key parts of the game, contest, territory, the things in the game that are really crucial to success.
So the midfielders, what did they learn from last week that they have to show again on Saturday night here?
Oh, we don't win it at the contest. We're in trouble, and that's. I don't think there's any side in the competition that wouldn't say that, and we've seen Sydney do that to a lot of sides, and we're another one of those sides that got a first-hand lesson on their home ground that they still show why they are in the top lot on the competition.